I think we are live though. So if you do want to tweet, you can pick it up off Facebook from Casey Biscare's Facebook page. So we are live. We're at Woodford Library talking about a business incubator accelerator idea for the Prospect Avenue neighborhood. And we do introductions. I'm Rick Usher, Assistant City Manager for Small Business and Entrepreneurship.
Hi, I'm Melissa Robinson. I'm the founder. Where am I looking?
That's the
okay,
camera.
I'm looking at that.
Just
Okay.
talk to people in the room.
Okay.
I'm good.
I'm Melissa. I'm the founder of Eastside Collaborative. We're a shared workspace and community for Black business owners and mobile professionals, and we are incubating in Kentucky Village on 42nd and Troost.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Got a home now?
It's kind of a home. We are there once. We're there every Tuesday from 9 to 5 and every second and fourth Thursday from 7 to 10. Weird hours, but we're working it out.
Okay. I'm Montgomery. My company is Urban Tech. TEC stands for Technology Empowered Communities. I work with K-12 education on technology integration in the classroom, and I do student technology projects, student technology field trips, and anything technology 21st century for urban schools and communities.
My name is Cedric Williams. 2 years ago, I started a business called Evolving Digital Media. We help small businesses and nonprofits with their digital marketing, website creation, social media, content creation, and distribution. We've helped over 50 businesses in 6 different states. So it's about me and 4 other people. I went to Baker University, which is about an hour away. And after that, I did an internship with my university, and I basically built their social media strategy. So I saw that there was a need for small businesses and nonprofits with social media. So basically done that and been very successful.
You got a card?
Yes, ma'am.
That's the only fun part.
For real,
is
for real.
She gets
Oh
to
my gosh.
make some good contacts.
That's right.
So,
Thank you.
hey there, how you doing? Hello. Hi, I'm Rick Usher.
I'm Devontae.
Devontae,
Mhm.
nice to meet you.
Charles.
Charles, nice to meet you. Hey, so we're on Facebook Live, but we're also just having a conversation in the room. Just wanted to let you know that, we got some viewers.
You want to move that to say, you can put that
Daisha,
closer to Rick.
so do you guys know these folks? Daisha Orton, Brenda Daly, Gina English?
No, but I
Hello, thanks for joining. Comment here and we'll try to get a conversation going with you folks as well. So, Anita, did you?
No, Nia Richardson. I work full-time for Bo8 Consultants. We do civil structural engineering. I'm the Director of Marketing and Business Development. My more probably relevant role in the community right now that relates to the conversation would be on the board chair for Blue Hills Community Services at 5008 Prospect. And we have the incubator right now that has 10 office spaces and 7 storage units for contractors.
Okay, we're just doing introductions and a bit about business, if you have one, or just what your interests are.
I'm Charles. I'm just community. I'm concerned about the community.
All right.
Anything that happens, I'm concerned. That's all.
I'm Devontae, just a regular community activist and
All right.
representing the community.
Okay, thanks for joining us. How'd you find out about our meeting?
Facebook.
Facebook, all right. Social media.
Exactly,
Right,
works.
well, that's kind of like where I push this mostly too. So the library has a posting on their page, just because I come here every third Monday of the month, 3 to 5, either junk page or myself. And usually it's just an open discussion about whoever comes in and see what we want to talk about. This time though, I thought with this much, like I was talking about earlier, with as much conversation as there is about a startup accelerator or other business support, that we would really start talking with the community. And Nia, the Blue Hills has had a contractor focus. Are you looking at expanding that focus then, or?
What I currently am trying to do with 5008 is actually expand the building out to offer more office space and incubation, as well as co-working space, and potentially maybe even some retail space as well. Right now, yes, it does service contractors, but at the moment, we have a few contractor businesses.
care?
Yeah, come on
Yay.
in.
So we have a few contractor businesses, and we have and we have KCATA, who has 4 offices in there right now, because they are working on Prospect Max. The hope is that the partnership with KCATA that we have right now is to maybe start some conversations around, potentially a TOD at that site, since it's a long prospect in front of a major stop.
What's that acronym stand for?
Transit oriented development, meaning that, KCATA, if they're doing Prospect Max, could invest in economic development along the corridor. So it's a potential pot of funding to help support an expansion like that. So ideally, 5008 is such a unique location. It's located right off the 71 highway, has high visibility. It's in a very catalytic spot. It hasn't been as catalytic as we would hope it would be, considering the various other developments that could be happening right now. But the goal is to, we want to push the focus to minority businesses, particularly Black businesses, because that is the majority in the community. Blue Hills itself has over 90+% of African Americans in the community. We also recognize that economic wealth building and creation must happen in order for communities to thrive. So it's not about housing, it's not about building more buildings, it's about actually building the wealth of the people in the community. So the hope is that the expansion would help bring in small businesses to get started, get rolling, that will create the demand to pour out into the Prospect corridor. So you have demand for businesses, and you have all the stuff that's going on with development that can be happening on the Prospect corridor with the sales tax and with a lot of other initiatives that are coming down the pipeline. So it's just building that ship to get ready for that tide. It's pretty much what we're trying to do.
And, hi, I'm Rick Usher with the City Manager's Office.
My name is Judy Bumpus. I'm with the Women's Business Center, and I just saw your email, so I thought I would stop in and see what.
Oh, great, you work with Sherry Turner. Okay, great, thanks for joining us. Thanks. So you mentioned the Central City sales tax. Is everyone familiar with that? Okay. And then in that area, that's 9th to Gregory. So 5008 is about.
It's on Prospect.
So halfway down.
It's on the
centrally
line.
located?
Yeah. So see, 9th Gregory, Paseo to Indiana. So Prospect corridor within the sales tax boundaries is the largest commercial corridor. And it's unique because of the 50-50 of housing and commercial properties that lie along Prospect. So you would have to address it from both issues of housing rehabilitation and small business infrastructure, which is really needed for the corridor. But the sales tax, we hope, or that was meant to be set up to support those type of initiatives and things like that.
She's been on them at the meetings.
You saw me in the meeting
Yes.
before?
Both of us was there. We saw you. We saw you.
So jumping on them about what they're doing and what they're not doing.
That's one thing about Nia, she's gonna champion.
Yeah, and well, we need community champions, and that's.
But she inspired me. I wasn't gonna say nothing at first. I'm the one from New York. I was telling them about it. I saw the stuff that happened in New York, and I can see it happening here if they don't hurry up and do something about the changes.
So what did you see in New York?
I'm from South Bronx, and I've lived in Harlem. And it's all, Harlem is all gentrified now. It's the character of Harlem's not there anymore like it used to be, and I can see that happening down in the Jazz District. And I see a lot of, here in Kansas City, I suppose, I worked on the Minneapolis Revitalization Initiative in Minneapolis, and I see here that there's a lot of disconnect here. I mean, the things she's doing in Blue Hills, and you got everybody spread out doing these single initiatives. Nobody's, I'm about collaboration and stuff, and that's what I'm trying to do is trying to get an initiative started here in Kansas City Urban Core to get everybody to collaborate, everybody come together, because all these problems, can no one person or one organization solve all the problems over here on the east side? So that's my goal, is to create an initiative, revitalization initiative here in urban core. And my first objective is to create a strategic plan, mainly for starting off with Oak Park. I have a history. I have family that's from there, and if I can get that started, then I'm just gonna replicate all over. I worked also, like I was in grad school. I worked on the Big Five initiative with the chamber,
Okay.
and it didn't work out like it was supposed to.
It
in my
didn't,
opinion.
they didn't, huh?
Okay.
Right.
No, it did not.
It didn't, and I was an advocate for it at first, and now I'm one of the biggest. I told him wasn't gonna work behind the nonprofit that was starting and who's running it. I knew that there was gonna be some problems there.
Which particular initiative are you referring
The
to?
Big Five, the Urban Core Initiative.
Oh, you and I.
Yeah, it didn't.
What was the intent? I'm so
The
curious.
intent, it was supposed to be a huge collaboration of everybody over in the east side, the Urban Core. It was, they had everybody in the chamber and all these big businesses, everybody's gonna pool the resources in and create what they call a collective impact initiative here, where you have everybody on the street, you create a backbone organization to lead the organization. You get all the stakeholders in the whole urban core, every stakeholder over here to collaborate and just everybody just have one big brainstorm type thing, but everybody's on the same, it's got some requisites for everybody's on the same page and stuff like that. Everybody get money from the same pool, everybody pool your resources and stuff like that, but it didn't.
But we got a school.
Hmm?
But we got a school out of it.
Yeah, but it didn't, it's not working.
Yeah, and it's not, finished, and,
What do you mean?
I'm just trying to keep
But it's not structured the way that it was supposed to have been structured.
Yeah.
As a collective impact initiative. That's the problem. That's why, I mean, you can't have an executive director that's wearing about 5 or 6 different hats. In other organizations, they need one, because it's too complex.
Yeah.
The problems in the urban core is too complex for that, so.
Yeah, they did just bring Daniel Serta on as a program manager for part of that.
Yeah.
I thought he was over at,
He's at LISC, but he was hired as, UNI program manager, as I understand it, the conversation I had with him.
Oh, for you and I
So-
specifically, not the Big Five?
No, it's
Right,
you and I.
yeah, for UNI. So this is really useful though, because I want to try to identify all of the programs, opportunities, people involved throughout the community. Hey, how you doing?
Sorry.
So that we can, hopefully get to that kind of collective impact or something close. I know we come in, so we did introductions. You do want to?
Sure.
Explain a little bit?
I'm Brian Stone. I know a few folks here. Kansas City Area Transportation Authority. I do economic development.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Brian. I ran into Brian at Urban Summit
Mhm.
Friday,
Yeah.
and thanks for joining us.
Do I know you? When I had a meeting with you with Mr. Creek.
Oh, the eggs and line?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes, sir, that's my client.
So Eggs and Enlightenment. Can you tell us a little bit about Eggs and
No, I
Enlightenment?
can't. I've only been to one meeting, and I guess my client.
You don't attend those, Rick?
No, I've been.
Oh, okay.
I want to hear someone else's perspective.
Oh, I see.
So I'm gonna-
Exit Alignment is sort of like a weekly roundtable. You talk about different issues that may affect you in some kind of way. You might bring in different people from the community, like each state representative, maybe somebody from the school board, maybe somebody from the city. It's just a weekly roundtable. You discuss issues that may affect you in any kind of way.
When does it happen?
Every
Is it
Friday
open?
morning. Yeah, oh goodness, every Friday morning at 9 to 11.
Is it always at the McDonald's?
At
No, we
McDonald's.
McDonald's on
14
14th
years.
and Prospect.
Yeah, so as we, identify, where the conversations are having and when, then that's how we can.
Also, he's being kind of humble here. I don't know why. I'm gonna set him out because he taught me to come in this meeting. He's also running for school board,
All right,
and I work with Brandon Ellington.
all right. All right,
So I don't know why we try to hide him.
appreciate you guys, joining us.
No, I think they're in a special session today
He'll be here tomorrow.
with Brighton,
I
right?
just texted me, so he'll be in tomorrow morning.
Yeah, so that exit enlightenment, I have attended a few times. I presented, I forget what I was talking to them about. It might have been just what we're doing at Casey BizCare, what we've been doing with microlending or some other things. But, so we also mentioned Urban Summit. You want to give everybody like a thumbnail sketch what happens at Urban Summit?
Urban Summit, also on Friday mornings, from 8:30 to 10. Weekly meetings, but they're on break now. The last meeting was last Friday morning. It is very, community issue and initiative focused. Same as Exit Enlightenment, maybe a bigger group, I'm not for sure.
Yes, right.
Maybe-
Our time is bigger than Exit Enlightenment.
Okay.
On format purpose.
Yeah, it's just mainly a collaboration, a variety of groups.
And can I say this?
Yeah.
Better eggs.
Good breakfast.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Great, bigger breakfast, greater breakfast.
Definitely
Only because it's not McDonald's. But they meet weekly. We have cell chairs. I'm the cell chair for young professionals. There's the economic development. There's a housing. There's a health. There's reentry, voting. I know I'm missing one, but there are various topics or issues that get addressed. Each cell chair is responsible for hosting a Friday morning meeting and bringing the guest speaker in around a particular topic or issue. And so that's primarily where Urban Summit kind of comes from. It was convened by Bishop Tyndall, former Jackson County legislator, and pastor at Metropolitan Church on 12th and Garfield. I don't want to get mixed up with the other Metropolitan.
One is Baptist and one is spiritual.
Spiritual.
Right.
Yeah. Spiritual. But that's pretty much the gist of Urban Summit.
All right, and the genesis really of the 8-cent sales tax.
The genesis of the 8-cent sales tax, yeah, it was pushed out of Urban Summit. A few of the Urban Summit members, like Dr. Karen Curls, was one of the creators of it. It is a Missouri statute by law, but it's the first time in the country that a community has pushed forth a sales tax upon itself and got it voted on and passed citywide. So that's why you see me pushing very heavily on that, because I work on the campaign. I work with people who put that together.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you tell me why, when you got done talking, remember I said I was piggybacking off you because I'm big on economic development. I'm also big on the money that comes there, that stays there.
Yeah.
And when I asked that question, nobody would answer. Remember I said that I see it seem like everybody's hustling businesses for Kansas City, but they hustling businesses taking money out of the community. You know, I know about Office Bank. They don't mean, in my opinion, they don't mean the community any good.
Most banks don't.
And
That's right.
I know that I was doing the picketing myself for the problems they was having for Sunfresh down in Westport. So I know, those people, they don't have our interest in, to me they don't. And Pizza Hut is a corporation that's just gonna suck money out of it.
Right.
So now to myself, we need businesses that circulates money in the community, because economic problems ain't the only thing that's wrong with the community.
But it starts. That's going to be
start there, yeah.
That's going to be a big alleviator of a lot of the problems that we have or that we face in our community. So you don't have a lot of discussions that I've seen around community wealth building and generation. In fact, I have yet to sit in a meeting where that is the topic of conversation versus how do we do low-income housing,
Right. That's
and
what I'm doing.
keep with the coin word of economic development in the urban core. My argument with the board was about the fact that, if it's not structured correctly, then we will continue to miss out on opportunities like that, because people seem to think in one fashion of how economic development is supposed to work in distressed communities, which has nothing to do with the people. So you can rebuild the community and you can push the people out, but people are still gonna be poor wherever they go. We're just gonna have another ghetto somewhere else. So when will people wake up and realize it's not about the buildings and the infrastructure, it's more about the people who impact the infrastructure? So the whole point of which was presented to that board was to really focus on something along that line. But right now, what they're really setting up is just another engine to feed developers money to do economic development east of Truce. Meaning, again, like you said, the money's not gonna go in our pockets. It's not gonna recycle here. What a for-profit developer does, their model is set up to make money, come in, it's just like flipping a house or something, get your money and your investment out of it, you keep moving.
Yeah.
That's the typical model.
So what I'm trying to focus on with entrepreneurship and
Yeah.
small business growth is this idea. And so maybe I'll be the first one to say the topic is generational wealth building and economic mobility in the neighborhood, because you're exactly right. If you build and support locally owned businesses, then you're going to have that sustainability, right? The business owner is more likely to employ his
People in the community.
his or her neighbors from the neighborhood. So I'm trying to understand how to take a few programs that are working in other parts of the city and then understand how they might be applied in the neighborhood. Yeah.
Well, I was going to piggyback on what he said. He mentioned Arvis, and we can have a sidebar conversation. I had and I'm only saying that because I had the CRA director, I met with him last week at Central. And so he does have an interest in having more of a presence in investing in the community. And so we're having a conversation now on how can Arvis Bank be a sponsor at Central High School. So we did talk to the principal about the possibility of financial literacy classes, recognizing that there's always going to be the need for a strong financial literacy and education program. Mr. Madry, who's the principal at Central, discussed the model that he said worked for him in Houston, where kids could learn. Like if we give you $50 at the beginning of the year, you still have that same 50 inside your bank account. We'll match it, we'll do something. So that goes to what Nia's saying about building wealth, where they're understanding just because I got $50, $100 in my pocket doesn't mean I have to spend it. So it's teaching that discipline, teaching that control, keep the money in the bank. And so I can just say from my conversation and meeting with him, he is interested. He's a CRA, Community Reinvestment Act regional director. He came in from Arkansas. And they are looking to expand their presence in Kansas City. So I'm not sure what your expectation is right now, but Kansas City is one of their smallest markets. They're like their first time outside of Arkansas. So they're trying to connect. And that was his comment to me. We're not connecting to Kansas City. We need to do more. So he's excited about having Central as one of his, pilot projects, whatever. So I'll be working with him over the next couple of months with Mr. Madry on how that looks and how they can offer. So he did commit definitely to financial literacy for students and for parents. And as you guys probably know, one of the issues that, unfortunate issues that I found out a couple of years ago that our students have is their parents using their social security number for utilities and for rent. I'm sorry, not for rent, but for getting into apartments. So the parents have already ruined their credit. And so now you got 15, 16-year-olds, and I did a full employment class, workforce development, a couple of years ago, and they were asking me at 16, 17, 18, how can I clean my credit up? I'm like, what credit? Well, my mom had to use my social to pay, our utility bill or to get a new apartment. So that's another issue that we have that needs to be addressed. And so those are one of the types of classes he's going to be addressing over at Central.
Well, there's 4 epilepsy centers in Kansas City. And I have been really pushing people because I see people all the time with that issue. And also they're paying people lots of money to quote clean their credit out.
Right.
When there's organizations that are doing it for free.
Exactly.
And nobody's gonna clean credit up in 30 days anyway. It doesn't work. They don't understand that whole process. So they would be one of those organizations would be a good person to invest in coming out there and working with the kids at Central.
Yeah. So as we're talking, if you have some ideas you want to throw on the board here, just grab a pen and a tab there and we'll put it down there. I talked a bit about design thinking earlier, and it's a process of just having a conversation like we are about what we might do in the way of an incubator accelerator, rather than just saying, hey, here's an incubator accelerator, have fun. We want to really work with the community to figure out how that might come about. And sir, you just walked in, could you introduce yourself?
So,
And we're on Facebook Live, I want to give you that heads up.
oh,
So,
hi Facebook world. Hi everyone in the group. My name is Quest. What else do you need?
what do you do? I listen to your podcast, so I know you can talk. But,
Let's
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
so give us
Conversation,
like a
yeah.
30-second,
I know,
what's
when
going
was
on
the
at Project
podcast?
United
Podcast.
And why is it so shy?
So my name is Quest. If anyone's interested in the podcast, Microsoft did a story on us and all of the great work we do in breaking down the barriers of entrepreneurship and getting people funded. I run an incubator and an accelerator dubbed the Startup Studio, where we help entrepreneurs validate their existing ideas or validate an existing business model with a new product or a service, where we help business owners that have a napkin idea, a very early stage idea, something they haven't told anyone or they've just validated with friends and family. And we run it through a gauntlet of a 12-week curriculum that helps you identify your business model, your customer, your financial pieces, and it wraps it all up into an actual deck, and then helps you get connected into other resources in the Kansas City area. So we mainly like to help. Now our model is to help you get aligned with other organizations that can help you at the right time of your business growth. So there's already a lot of existing cool business services in the Kansas City metro area. The people and the leaders within that group are not connected to our community, so we oftentimes get left out when they claim, well, they do advertising, but it's not advertising in our community or the Latino community or certain other urban off communities. And so it's how do we get you connected to those groups that we know about that are giving away money or cash at the time? And then how do we help you find other opportunities that may not be in the Kansas City area, but that are looking for Black founders or women founders or LGBT founders or whatever it might be. They just have a hard time getting deal flow.
And full disclosure, I actually went through Quest's program through Project UK in this last cohort that he had, the co-starters. And Eastside Collaborative came out of that. And so piggybacking on what Quest is saying, we do try to take the information that I receive, like from different things like Scale Up or Casey SourceLink or wherever we find that information, and pop it over to our community because, like you said, there's a disconnect. They're not advertising. And also, I think sometimes we see information, we just ignore it because we don't think it's for us. So, both ways.
I'm sorry, I have a 4 o'clock meeting, so I have to leave, but tell me the name of your organization.
Project UK.
UK?
Yeah.
What does that stand for?
Project United Knowledge.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I just saw the email, like,
Okay.
10 minutes before I
Thank you for
ran
coming.
here.
Go ahead. Your card, I can
Live.
email
I
you.
suggest do not look at it while driving. We're not responsible.
No, the meeting, I just.
No, you're taking the KCATA
And
and
I'm
sit
also,
down. You can listen to it.
this is also on Casey Biscare's Facebook page, so you can go back and.
And I'd like to speak on the statement he made about the disconnect.
Yeah.
I agree with that also, because I'm a part of the block school, the MKC, in particular,
awesome.
the Midwest Center for Nonprofit Management. And that's what they say up there. That's what all my professors now would say. You know, we have these entrepreneurial programs up here, you know, like the Levitt Challenge, and all that. And what they think it's just for the students here in the school, but it's not. It's for people here in Kansas City. And they're welcoming the people that come to us, like especially the Levitt Challenge they have every year, which they have like 82 of the most powerful people in the city that listen to your pitch and finance you, and nobody shows up. It just be.
It's not
But how do
advertised.
they
That's
communicate?
the-
never heard of
And
it.
that's the
E-Scholars program that you're talking about? E-Scholars program?
No, it's the,
This is a different pitch that happens on this set aside from e-scholars. There's multiple things besides e-scholars that happen at UMKC.
Write it down. You gotta put it on the board.
Did you say the 11? Would you just?
Levitt, Aaron Levitt Challenge.
Okay, okay.
It's an entrepreneurial challenge, but you go, I think like 6 months, you go to classes like once a month, I think. And then they teach you how to pitch your business, whether it's for profit or non-profit. And then like, what's this, May, I think they're pitching this month to a big, like 80-something people they're pitching to most, biggest entrepreneurs here in Kansas City, and you do your 7-minute pitch to them and stuff, and
Can you spell Levit, please?
Levitt.
Oh, that's what you're saying.
So Rick, I got a question for everybody in the group and you. Is there a place where this community that's gathering together has a sense of where its identity rests, where it can share information about opportunities, programs, meetings, activities like what we're doing?
I'm probably on everybody's Facebook page in this room.
No, he means like there's
I know, but
not a base or wherever, but no, to answer your question, no,
No.
that needs to be done.
So I talked to Maria, probably a year and a half ago, and one of the issues because I'm up and down the corridor working for KCATA, looking at Prospect, and I got 10 miles of it. And the challenge is it's so long that people on the southern end don't really know anything about what's going up on the north and mid end, and vice versa. And I'm just using that as an example. I think that being able to have some type of a framework where people can plug in and tap into that sense of what's happening in my community, my area of interest, my focus.
Is that the kiosk gonna do?
Well, it maybe could be, it could be.
Could it be announcements for community
And the kiosk,
meetings and things
Yeah,
like that?
I mean, where
I've
people
been saying
can,
the website for years and I've just never done it.
have an open forum where people can post meetings and events, and kind of gets back to something that came up last Friday. I've heard this said before, having some type of a workshop that we can find funding sources for that gives people an opportunity, not necessarily to become a developer overnight, but learn the fundamentals of, if you want to build a building, you want to buy a commercial property or go into residential, you really need to have an orientation, just like an entrepreneur. The best education for entrepreneurs is failing, right?
Is that but isn't that what the REAP program was supposed to do? Or is it not to that level?
Well, quite honestly, I was sharing with Rick the other day, there's so many programs out there. I've been around a lot of this stuff for 20 plus years, and it's just an alphabet soup. You get lost unless you're really in the middle of it or have just come out. I think if there was a way that you could gather and sort it by, where are you at? Are you just beginning? Are you been in business 5 years? You want to get in business? You want to build? You want to develop?
So
And some of this might be getting into your area.
Yeah, that's
but I'm not-
So there are
Source Link
resources
does.
already, yes, KC Source Link does that.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is
Still on
challenge
MySpace.
those organizations to actually get involved in the community, in the
So-
other communities.
So I asked
So we
them,
can use, why create?
But we don't
something?
have enough outlets in our community. to
Right.
so I asked them to do that. Could they do that? And I don't want to speak beyond this group, but could they do that for a corridor? Because part of my challenge is that even for the surrounding suburbs and the metro, SourceLink becomes just a big wash. There's so many things that have nothing to do with you and where you're physically at, and what you want to do, where you want to do business. Could they focus one on a corridor? Maria said yes, they could.
Yeah, but I would really suggest them working with the neighborhood associations to do that because they need ways to strengthen themselves and be more of a resource.
And be able to collaborate those resources.
Yes.
Neighborhood associations
Need more
and then
resources, yeah.
church organizations
Neighborhood
as
associations.
well, right?
Neighborhood associations.
Neighborhoods, okay.
Neighborhoods.
What you're saying is they're not connected enough to the communities which they say this.
Correct, and then we're limited to the outlets of which they can actually advertise opportunities. So unless you're in the know and you know someone who's in the know, you don't know.
Right.
And social media can be a proof that it can all, like you said, can get washed away in all the waves of resources or information that comes at you. And you might not be paying attention or think it's not for you.
Well, they're planning to have, I was mentioning to Rick, and I'm looking for the date now, or they could have already had it. American Roundtable, how can we help you?
Casey sort of had it like first week of May.
It's already happened.
Yeah, I think it happened like the first week of May.
Facilitated by Kay Saunders.
So it was Casey Sortling,
And Bellwether.
and Bellwether.
Okay, so it's already
Yeah,
happened.
it already happened. That was like the first week of May, I want to say. And I don't know what the outcomes is.
No,
of that.
no.
Do you know anyone who attended?
Well,
Who's aware of it?
there's other kind of grassroots efforts that are starting up, like Black Privilege, that can be resourced and
Mhm.
supported and amplified to do something similar.
You already
They're
got
having
Yeah,
there's this Thursday,
What's the
May
difference
24th.
between Black and Black privilege?
Right.
What's the difference between them?
I don't know what Black Privilege does. I mean, I know a lot
They're
about
launching their app Thursday, so we'll find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
Black CEO.
It's the same thing.
Black CEO was
as
yesterday.
Black, just one of them got 150 grand. right? That's one big difference. So once we'll have a real legitimate app.
Who got the
That
money?
works.
Black
Black
Trump.
They really got the money.
What programs do they have that, a lot of organizations here on the east side, they have a problem with capacity, they don't have capacity, even, they mean good, but they just, when they go down to the city to present stuff to them, that's what they mean, you don't have the capacity.
I'm trying that story, man.
Huh?
I'm hearing that story. That's the best excuse, just not.
I mean, it can be the truth, it can be the truth, because it's the truth with the organizations that I'm at.
Depends on the organization.
Yeah.
What do you mean? So, what do you
They
mean?
don't have enough capacity to do anything.
No.
Same when they
Resource.
say when they say that black businesses don't have capacity to do
But
anything.
not-
They said the
Not just the
organizations-
business, the organizations in the community.
We don't,
Yeah.
we don't, because we're
Resources to
getting attacked. No, we don't have the capacity, and when we say we need capacity, they don't give it
Like
to us.
there's,
And they do things like what they did with the project you were talking about, is put resources in a place that doesn't deserve it. When you already have the assets there, when people can't control something, they go and create their own. So that's what conspired out of the whole Big Five deal. That's why many people in the community are looking at you and I like, the hell is this? Seriously, we are looking at, from my perspective as being a board chair for CDC, you and I is my competition, because all of a sudden now you're a CDC. And now you want to do all these different projects.
And all of a sudden you are a competition, we should be collaborating.
Exactly. So, so many of us are not familiar, and that's why I asked, like, what was the purpose of, what was the original intent, because I don't see it.
But you and I,
Yeah, you told me. So that's why I had asked the question, because I'm just confused, and I've been dumbfounded for a while to try to figure that out. So collaborating is gonna be real hard to do in the community. It's always been hard growing up here and watching it, and watching people, same people I deal with now, do the same things they've been doing for years. So I haven't really seen that. I hope that we can get to that point, but that's the hurdle we gotta get over amongst ourselves first. So we'd love to see a centralized place for businesses to actually grow and get going. I think it's great that you have something that's geared towards startup. My focus is more so for existing businesses. I know they exist. I know black businesses exist in Kansas City, they're just spread out. And we need to try to find incentives of where you're getting people back into the community. Population wise, there's residents and small businesses, because Prospect should be a small business corridor. That's the only way. It was the only way we're gonna thrive. No big box.
And
No big
locally owned businesses, like.
Locally owned
No
businesses.
Starbucks, let's get Urban Cafe to
Yeah,
expand.
right,
exactly.
Let's get,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's what Project UK, anyone would probably get that piece confused, although we do have a heavy focus, and I mean, heavy focus is like 20 to 30% on high growth, high startups. The other 70% is really focused on how do you create a real taxable based business? Because when you really start to consider economics and everything rolls off of taxes, and if we're getting taxes instead of people are tax abatements, it's you need legitimate businesses that pay taxes within their local neighborhoods, so schools, infrastructure, and everything else benefits.
Right.
So the reason why we use the startup way is because if you're still going after traditional money to try and build something, the odds of you getting enough money and being honest as a black or minority business to truly scale your operation is actually quite hard.
Yeah.
Wrap it in this much tech, you just expose yourself to 30 more, we'll just say a few hundred more potential people that could give you funding and or money. So if Chris really does roll out on-demand clean juice to everyone in the city, well, now he's the Instacart of juice. Chris could raise $20 to $30 million off of a concept like that, depending on how he wants to roll it out. Will it necessarily work? We always look at it, and I think I've had this conversation with Malika and what is the missed opportunity of all of the startup money? And we're talking $60 billion that's thrown away down the trash can every year that us black people don't get. So what's your name, brother?
Charles.
Charles. So if I all of a sudden invested $30 million into Charles's business for 25%, and he called me 4 years later and he's like, hey, Quest, we really tried to make a run at it, but we're just gonna shut it down. No, I'm gonna go sell it to Brian for $75 million. We all bet one. Even though it crashed and burned, how many times year in and year out does that happen to white men, white women, and a small 0.2% portion of us? Even if the business fails, Now Charles, even though he has a failed business, like you got $20 million left over, hey, I want to go start up a smoothie business. Can you give me $2 million? Thank you. That's how that works. We miss out on all the opportunities. I get the whole mainstream. We need to have more brick and mortars, but I can't invest into, or us as a community can't invest into the next Chris Good because we don't have it. You have Davion over here that the business will most likely exit for $100 million plus. But how do we find 10, 100 at Davions? That way, the next time we want to start the Main Street businesses, you guys want to start a credit union, literally someone in the audience might just have it and just says, hey, here's 1.5.
Well, and I think also it goes to what I thought the purpose of today was, how are we going to create that ecosystem between accelerators, co-working spaces, and what was the other thing? Incubators, right.
Incubators
So it has that look,
co-working.
Your first stage or whatever incubator, you go to Quest to find out how to even get going. So what's the next step? Now that you finish, where do you go now to get support and to get growth for what you're trying to do? So we don't have an
Well, and
ecosystem.
like Cedric tells you, you're home-based business, right? So sometimes the evolution is you take home-based into a co-working space. Then as your business grows, you maybe grow out of that co-working space. And although I'm seeing more and more these distance working teams where you might have 2 or 3 employees. Did you say you had 4 employees?
Yeah.
So how do you communicate?
They all work from home, yeah.
So you have a remote working
Right.
network already. Yeah. Which
But
is,
even him telling other people about his model, and them, if that's conducive to their business, they can probably set something up like that as well. But we have to have some kind of ecosystem to share that information and share the resources.
yeah, you
So
still,
that's what I
but
think
you
we're
still
still
need
missing.
some contact, and so like, do you ever meet at coffee shops? I'm kind of plugging my own.
Yeah, they come to my home sometimes.
Okay.
And then we have events where we have to go out and document, content is when we usually also.
Okay. You ever use a coffee shop?
Yeah, well, yeah.
That's an approachable.
We gotta be careful these days about coffee.
So what's your favorite coffee shop?
No, it really doesn't matter. I meet anywhere, Starbucks, McAllister's, just, yeah, it doesn't really matter. I let them choose usually.
Go out to different parts of town.
Right, to the library.
So a lot of the conversation about buying local, with KC SourceLink, we have a shop local KC roundtable. And I've been hosting that every other month. I'm due for a meeting on that. But the idea is that we bring business associations across the city together. And the first discussions we've had is on sharing social media and on sharing the hashtag #ShopLocalKC. And then KC SourceLink has a Shop Local page that has a few blogs about why Shop Local is significant in your community, and how, I forget what it is, 60% of your dollars spent locally, I mean, in a locally owned business stays in the community rather than, much lower percentage when the company's headquartered, say, Seattle. So KC SourceLink, Jenny, Jenny Miller, Jenny's been here before. So Jenny, they have an effort underway to try to identify more businesses in the Prospect Corridor, more businesses east of Troost. There's a web page.
I just tell you right now that won't work.
What are they trying to do in that?
Well, so I would have to ask, Jenny to come and explain the program fully, but part of what they're doing on the Shop Local page is mapping businesses. And I think the idea is that you would have then a map of where you could go and shop and maybe make sure, because I could tell you I'm a locally owned business, but if it's a franchise, I own McDonald's. Am I a locally owned business? I mean,
Depends on who
Well,
owns it.
yeah.
If the person owns it, yeah, like the one on 6030 and Choose, we know that's black owned, so I go and support it.
Okay.
So, yeah,
And that
it's
makes
considered-
sense.
it's considered
And so
local,
that's,
yeah.
that's some of the conversation to have as well, because I know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now, I wonder, what was the name of the program that lady was talking about, that meeting was there,
but they said the people that got startups and they go and help them, they put it out there that this place and everybody mob down there and buy stuff.
Oh, they do the Prospect Business Association does a cash mob.
Yeah.
Cash mob.
So this is association members. So Prospect Business Association has only been around a couple of years.
I know.
That's pretty new, but it's grown pretty significantly, which is great, because we need those type of initiatives or assets in the community to kind of help with the conversations that are being had. So yes, they do the cash mobs on the businesses, but the thing is having a viable businesses outside of a Family Dollar, a liquor store, a beauty and barber shop, which are cool businesses to start off with, but we need other types of businesses in our community that we can patronize and also work at. So that's gonna be the challenge there. And one thing that we saw at Blue Hills is when we did the study, they did a feasibility study on the south end of Prospect from 47 to 75th. And they were trying to start the starting process of a CID and found that there weren't enough businesses to support the infrastructure needs. So you can go and identify businesses all day long if you're not gonna give the businesses the resources, which was the argument I was making with the sales tax. You know, they need resources, redo their front porch. Some of them have viable businesses, but just can't fix them up. Help redo their front porch, help it be more attractive. The sales tax should be the carrot for development, and we should be utilizing that to clean up our front porches, clean up our streets, and make it more attractive for people to stay and come and patronize. And then go from there.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
Jamila Jones, EDC.
So, like a facade rebate program, there's a number of ideas that could be pitched. So on the Central City Board, they're making the application process open June 1. So concepts like that could be proposed.
I really couldn't tell you what can be proposed, but nobody's seen it. We have no idea what the application was. I think that was the meeting he was talking about. That was part of the challenge that I presented to them to say, hey, you talk about being transparent. Well, what does this application look like?
Right.
And what input did the community have? So we know that we're not just sitting there typing at you every time we have a meeting, that you're taking notes and you are taking that into consideration when moving forward. I just find it challenging. Yeah.
Though, plus the strategy behind how.
I beg to differ if they have a strategy, but if they have the application, great, but it's really just gonna be for development. Just pushing out those development dollars, which only 20% of those dollars really has to be utilized for. So nobody's really focusing on the other 80% that we could be utilizing for, which could be for the facades and things like that. Yes.
Well, and
I'd like to see the application.
I got one on here. They put one online.
is it available online now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm fixing to pull it up now.
So I think
It's on the website.
Yeah,
So
so
that-
it opens on June 1st.
that ability for, and I don't want to be, just be focusing on the one funding source, but it is eligible. I mean, support of the
something like
programs
that.
we're talking about,
Yeah.
Quest with the startup development, and that is certainly an opportunity, and people should apply for that. People should make that known.
The right people should apply for the things.
Right. So, Quest, is this your note here? Is this your note here, raise 1.5 to 4 million?
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna really talk about building an incubator, an accelerator, or getting resources, this just comes down to cash.
Yeah.
When you say 1.5 to 4, what are you talking about?
You know what else it is?
You need $1.5 to $4 million to build actually.
Pilot application.
Oh, it's not an application.
To launch an incubator and accelerator with a building, location, co-working space that's probably 15 to 30,000 square feet, you need $1.5 to $4 million. $750,000 would go into building infrastructure, it'll float you for that first year forward. The rest of the money would be used to invest on a yearly basis, similar to a Launch KC. So the reason why I said it's not gonna work with KC SourceLink, you have Launch KC that has said the same thing. It's like, hey, we wanna find more minorities. Well, when you have 20 white men as the judges, it's already biased on the back end already. I don't care who's on the front end. You can put me on the front, you got 20 judges that don't know anything about the community, so it's not getting through. When there's no women on the back end, period. I mean, how many women have won Launch KC? Because I know it's less than 2. I know Jennifer Blige.
I was gonna say, yeah.
That's the only one I know.
Yes.
People of color, there hasn't been any digital sandboxes
Have they
yet.
pitched
Who what?
women of color?
No, there's no women of color in digital sandbox, scale up, pipeline. And all of these organizations have said there with the diversity breakfast that I go to every year, hey, we want more women and more Latinos and more Blacks to apply. So the odds of them being able to successfully navigate Prospect, Truist, Indiana, or any of the other areas, if I have trouble navigating those areas as a Black guy out of Leawood, I'm pretty sure Maria Myers is not going to get anywhere. Hire Malika. She has an incubator and accelerator going on and a co-working space that's actually pulling in people that's in the area. Give her the contract instead of giving some steady group the money to go through. I'm not saying that you have the power to go do it, but that's why I don't think it will work.
But that would be the whole point of building capacity with someone who's in the community to go forth to do it.
Give
So
them
you're not
money.
putting it in the hands of the people, you're not doing anything.
Yeah,
You're just-
yeah.
we
But your
know,
point is a good one, building
You have a great
capacity
point.
with people in the community already. And sometimes I feel like all this discussion is people acting upon the community versus finding people there and building those people up.
Right.
Rick and I had a conversation on Twitter about it, like there are people already doing this work.
That's not
And
gonna
then,
That's it. That's my term. Don't be a skydiver into the community to make the money.
you know, there are people already doing this work, and so those people might need certain types of resources, and we can ask for those resources, but we don't know how to get them.
so that's a good point. I mean, I appreciate your what Malika's talking about. Is I wrote an article for engaging local government leaders a few weeks ago about co-working spaces in Kansas City. And in local government, there's this idea out there that cities should open co-working spaces or cities should open incubators or accelerators. And my opinion really is that the private sector does a much better job at that and keeping it cool, right? Eastside Collaborative, Project United Knowledge. I mean, and the cities should take the position of finding those individuals and those organizations
Just providing the resources.
and helping.
Yeah.
And so what we're I hope, I'm trying to get good at is connecting and convening. And so thank you for coming today. We are convening, I hope we're connecting. And then though, documenting more and keeping this going beyond, one conversation.
Yeah.
So that we can take the results of today's conversation and come back here in a few weeks or in a month or so and work with the folks at Launch KC, with Digital Sandbox, KC SourceLink, to put these programs together so they really do serve the community better. Hello, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, I'm Catherine Golden with the Northwest Center in Johnson County.
Who let you across the state? I'll be the first to say.
I was gonna call.
So, I'll say this, that in my work in entrepreneurship, and thank you for being here, that I'm trying to really lay down the weapons in the border war, at least as it relates to entrepreneurs and startups. And so where you're from in the region is trying to avoid geopolitical boundaries. We had actually had a conference here. Did we go to the Federal Reserve Conference on build community? I forget what it's actually called. The hashtag was building eShip.
Yeah.
You were there.
No, I was not there, but I know of it.
Okay.
Who
And
spoke? Was it Dale Nines guy?
Dale Gines is
Okay.
kind of, I don't know if
Bill
he's listening,
Gaines,
but
Lydia
he's really
Richardson
involved.
was there.
I've seen him speak.
Rodney
before.
Simpson.
Rodney Sampson was there. And anyway, they were talking about boundaries and lines of influence. And it brings up so many issues. And so I really kind of added to the conversation by saying, that the edge of my boundary might be the middle of somebody else's sweet spot, So have you seen the graphic of your comfort zone and over here is where the magic happens? You have to cross the lines to make that happen, and that's hopefully if with collective impact, that's what we need to be doing, right? That you got a lot of people working outside their comfort zones, but with some level of trust that that would be some community.
So Rick, is there an epicenter that anybody in the room can identify that is a hub of lots of entrepreneurial activity on the east side?
I mean, besides our individual offices. That's the issue. Right, that's what we're saying, that's the issue, there is no.
Well, yeah, so I think part of it's a little bit like if we had the absence of any public forum or square or gathering place, where would you do those things?
Well, so you can see, like, I think this is it, this library,
Yeah.
Bluford, and I've seen, KCATA's Prospect Max maps that kind of show this area being a transit hub and containing something along the lines of an innovation center. So what I try to do is not come to the community with a real estate deal, but with a program. So this library offers me the real estate to have this meeting, and we can do that same thing at Blue Hills. We do it at Southeast Library Community Centers. But finding the epicenter, I also, in a lot of the work I've been doing, I've been really trying to map what's going on in the entrepreneurial community citywide. And Prospect Business Association being formed was really huge for me at City Hall, because working with individual business owners is much more difficult than working with a business association. And so that the monthly meeting, like, having a meeting tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. 9 a.m.? 9:30.
That's the,
Economic development.
yeah, that's the.
Yeah, so that is a good group to talk to, and then, so in the mapping that I've been doing, like, I mapped Bluford, that at least, I use this for office hours. Don Maxwell has the Colonial Building. From what I understand, the Colonial Building has about 22 or so small businesses located within the building. That has the potential, and I'm sure it happens probably there every day, of this kind of co-working environment happening, although it's not formally.
I think it's more office space. I don't think, we don't have anything on the east side.
retail.
We don't have a flex spot on the east side.
Right.
So
And so that is my goal, to create one, not a flex spot, Eastside Collaborative. That is my goal, to create something like that where, but I don't know if there needs to be an epicenter, right? Similar to, so what we're talking about is an ecosystem, which means there's more than one place where all these things can happen. Eastside Collaborative being one of them. But, I feel like there's lots of communication channels within our community that might not be apparent to you, but they are happening. There are, and you talked about there are these community, like the eggs and enlightenment and things like that, but there's also Facebook groups. There's lots of places where communication is happening. I don't know if the striving to one center place is even culturally relevant.
I mean, but if we had that one hub that you could go to, it's like, boom, I can get my resources from here, and then you can push it out. I mean, it's vital.
I don't mean to suggest that there needs to be one place, but you need to have known gathering spots where you can go and be a part of a collective community. And you're sharing stories, ideas. And I wasn't challenging Rick so much. I think Bluford is a lot. This is an epicenter for us for lots of reasons, not because we declared it so, but when you take a look at development and investment and momentum, 31st and Prospect is where a lot's getting ready to happen. And it's going to continue to go up and down the corridor.
But so, like, we have, the thing we have in Kansas City is, like, if you want to meet someone in the startup community, if you ask me, I'll typically say, what are you doing Wednesday at 9 a.m., go to A Million Cups.
Right.
If you go to A Million Cups, then there's 150, 200 or so people. A lot of them might be like-minded with what you're looking for. But I don't see, if you look at Brad Feld's book, Startup Communities, one of the tenets of his, what he calls his bolder thesis of entrepreneurial growth, is events and activities that engage the entire entrepreneurial community. So it would be interesting to have a monthly or a weekly event focused on entrepreneurship that's hosted, say, maybe it's Eastside Collaborative, maybe it's Project United Knowledge. We get some money from EDC to do that, right? So.
He just signed
He was
it up.
saying my side, saying my
But actually, hosting an event like that is not a high dollar proposition, but the value of bringing people together that comes out of that is huge.
My personal experience is that, just by way of background, I've done economic development, lots of communities, lots of organizations, 2 years at ATA. And being in economic development, I often found, I've talked to Quest, and I found many times, depending on what the entrepreneur is, they expect a transaction with economic development.
Yeah.
And I found the best outcomes were getting out of the way and letting things be facilitated in the background so that the entrepreneurs connected with one another. They found the right tools and the resources and the programming. And I, as an economic developer, stepped in the background. I could facilitate, but I didn't want to be the program. I didn't want to be the because there's a natural tendency that, well, this organization is going to run things. I didn't want to be that. And I'm looking at it from a host standpoint. So as I've talked to Quest, I've looked at places where do we have capacity where it's underutilized, where we can host, even if it's an interim basis, an incubator. And I've got lots of real estate out there, and as I'm pushing ATA, we need to be part of an investment scenario that's not just transit, it's building business and economic capacity or ecosystems to begin to develop. Not that we're defining, but that are being brought to us from within the community, that are authentic to the community.
Absolutely.
But I would also put forth the challenge to making sure that wherever you do this, that there's quality in the space and not just some tables and chairs put together and people saying, okay, this is a co-working space.
Right.
That was the challenge that I saw with Blue Hills and the incubator, that, okay, we're housing contractors, but I don't have a plan room for these contractors. They did not put into the design everything a contractor would need to be successful and not have to leave those walls except for a project to get what they needed. And so I agree with what you're saying, but we need to make sure that just like with anything that happens on the east side, quality is there. We won't get a flex spot unless we build it.
And there needs to be, so I was just there at Blue Hills doing an event on Friday. And
That's why the cars were there, okay.
I didn't have anybody that could help me with the AV side of it.
Mhm.
So I had to figure out, even though it was all geeked up with the equipment, and I was like, oh, okay.
That's a capacity issue.
Make sure
We don't
we're
have the
invited
staff
to every
To be
meeting.
there at
Yeah,
that.
I
to
know.
be there at that
Myself.
because of the position the organization is in, because of how the outside entities that should have been supporting us are not.
Right.
So I can give you a real life example where you have a huge asset in the community and the people that should be supporting organizations are not supporting it, and you get yourself in the position that we're in right now. So no, you didn't have that support in the community because we don't have staff.
And I'm not knocking.
No, but you make a good point.
It kind of gets to the point where, and I've been a part of a utility where we had $3.5 million tech center, and once you cut the staff, nobody knew how to operate it.
Yeah.
It's like,
Sure.
what the hell do you do with all this equipment?
Right, so just like when we had to cut the
Infrastructure
staff
you want.
for the community organizer that worked with the neighborhood association, now the community has to figure out how to do the things that the community organizer was doing because no one was teaching them. So there's even a level of communication of people that you put in position to make sure that each one is teaching one how to do something, and we're not dependent upon these people who get hired into the community to do work, unless they're coming out of the community. So that's what's going to be another challenge there. You have too many people coming in and taking
Finding
over.
the talent in the community.
I think the talent you can attract, just like anything else. I think if having the right leadership to put the talent in place is what I've been able to discover and see, that the talent is there, we have it. You're just not putting the right people in place. And it's a good old boys club to some degree. It was until I stepped into the arena. And everything just broke up.
She just stirred.
Yeah, I just heard completely that whole activity, and now there were all these young minorities in there working for a lot less, half the cost of what we were paying everyone else to really do the work.
So the quickest thing that I had was to piggyback off of what Brian was saying. And I think what everyone in here wants to see actually happen is a physical spot,
Yes.
but yet a spot that has quality resources that's connected to the rest of the community, that the rest of the community actually goes to and participates, and it's a bridge vice versa.
Right.
There's enough talented, smart-minded individuals in here to just say, hey, let's get together on a weekly basis and truly actually concept one of these. Let's just identify them, at least at the end of the day, I can't come into your construction development firm with just a bright ass idea and say, hey, I want to make this. But if I came to you and said, hey, it's going to be 30,000 square feet, I estimate the building is going to cost $700,000. We need to find $1.5 million. The budget is this, the finances are this is what's going to happen over 3 years. We know that we can go to the 8 cent sales tax people, we can go to the GO people, we can go to the PIAC people, we can hit a Kauffman Foundation, because what's going to happen is you have FlexPi, who is actively right now, and I've gone on their tours, looking at the east side of Truist, and they're going to put a building there.
No, please don't come.
It's
You already took over one of our schools. Please don't come. There's no disrespect to them.
I know, but
We need our own
You
bias,
have
or
the-
us bias.
but that's that piece that I'm trying to say. You have the opportunity tax zone credit, and how many of us in this room are educated on how the opportunity tax zone credit actually works?
Yeah.
So as you, I know how it works, I know you know how it works, but that's what they are about to use. And you gotta remember, who funds FlexPod and WeWork? WeWork is the people who own All Express, that's Ant Financial. Brains, the people, what is his name? Rick, what's the guy behind KC Rising? Dude from Sprint. LeMay.
Ron LeMay.
That's one of your, so you got Rigby, you got the Brains, you got LeMay, you got Gerald Smith, you got, and then the Brains' wife has roughly $25 million of her own. So you're playing with people that can literally, and they know all the developers, like Brian knows every single developer going down Prospect and Juice right now. We don't. John Copagan owns a series of buildings right now that he is willing to turn into an incubator, but no one has actually approached this dude and said, hey, here's my idea, here's the plan, I want to pull off a WeWork, I want to put it over here. Well, how do I get my money back? Oh, I'm going to sell it to FlexPi, or I'm going to sell it to
And
WeWork.
that's why it's important who owns it. So I don't want to go to them and ask them to do something.
Oh, no, you don't want to go to them.
Yeah.
You know that, we know that they're coming, you know the city's coming, you know KCATA is
Everybody's
coming.
coming.
So it's like, hey, where can we go ahead and grab this 30,000 square foot building or 10,000 or whatever it is? So all of us are actually housed in it. So when the real estate actually comes, we either A, have a decision to make, keep it, hold on to it, pay higher rent because we own it and pay higher taxes, or B, sell it out for hundreds of millions of dollars. Because that's what FlexPod is eyeing to do. They're gonna sell themselves to WeWork.
But I think it comes down to what we said earlier, and what it's about
I agree with all
us
that.
building wealth, and it's about us empowerment. And so if we can work together, which we know is a challenge,
Ten of us got together in the room.
and come up with this strategy, I mean, like you and I are on the same page, you know, I get you, I get Nia, I get Jamelia. And so bringing everybody else on that same page, having the plan, I mean, because right now, we're literally, as you were saying, we're watching the regentrification take place. So why are we just doing that when we have a quest with all this information and all this, you know, strategy? Let's just do it instead of just watching it happen, saying that, oh, it's gonna happen, you know, because I think there's so much we can do instead of just watching it happen. And then waiting 3-5 years down the road saying, well, we knew it was gonna happen, can't see there's another Harlem, can't see there's another, you know, whoever, where, you know, we don't have control of our community anymore, and where we still have needs for resources, we're gonna have to make it happen on our own. We're just gonna have to do that.
That's the whole push for wanting to expand.
Yeah,
the
and we're gonna have to leverage
Yeah,
the tax, because I know you've been trying to get, and people have approached me saying, Ina, get your plan together, you know, I didn't know June 1 was coming, you know, because last year, I thought it was 1st October.
Right.
Yeah, so I thought it was October, I was like, I'll be ready by
We don't have to
October,
debate
but
that.
okay.
We
you
don't
know.
have to debate that.
But I think that's the whole point of me really pushing to expand that building, because there is community ownership. We are controlling that building now. We do have a say so what happens there. And as long as I'm in the position that I'm in, I want to make sure that that remains an asset in the community. So the expansion of that could be all those things. We have the space that we have now, but I could replicate that building 3, almost 4 times over just on the land that we own, on the lot where the community garden sits. So community gardens only placeholders for future economic development in my community. We do not need that whole you don't need a bunch of community gardens to just create one big plantation, is what I try to tell you and I, since they like community gardens. They think that's what we like too. We need things that actually build wealth in our communities, and no matter what it is, no matter what economic development happens, or who builds it, it has to be in ownership of the people in the community, period. So I'm not looking for flex spots.
Let's do an introduction.
Oh, I'm Albert Kelly, and I'm actually Albert. I was walking down with Albert,
All right.
and so he kind of said, "Hey, let's go." Come on.
Albert's a regular here, so I'm glad he's there. And so then I also want to take a quick moment to say hello to Diana Clemens,
She
who's
did,
watching
I just,
Facebook
I
Live.
was navigating her to.
Yeah,
to
Diana
the page.
is watching live, thank you, and Dan Smith. Dan with,
Yeah,
right,
no.
Dan? No?
No,
I don't know.
Dan.
and it's with Porterhouse.
Porterhouse.
Yeah.
Is it, have you seen Porterhouse?
He's gonna say
Yeah.
that in just a minute.
Hey, Daniel.
Okay.
Just a minute.
So, thanks, and, if you can catch any of the conversation, want to throw something in, throw a comment up here, and, we'll keep this group talking. So I appreciate the time everyone is spending, so, we get Albert to come in. Albert, I met at, the, BEU, Black Economic Union, about, 10, 11 years ago. Ollie Gates was holding the Interurban Council meetings every Tuesday morning there, and we were engaged in a number of efforts.
What's the
there.
status of that now? VU? We don't know.
No longer in status.
Do you know why VU was started?
Yeah, they're the first.
They're the first black CDC,
Yeah.
older CDC, but they were, but I was told the story that they got started as someone was doing a collaboration with all the black entertainers
That
and
was
things
all the
like that.
entertainers and athletes got
Yeah,
together,
and
then
pulled the
they
money
created
in.
CDC, they put, it was a bunch of football players, I forgot all the football players and boxers, but if you find Marvin, he has like the whole, Marvin Lyman, he has the original book from BEU of like all of the original people that joined in, where all the money came in, like what actually happened, and then all the way to like the fall apart.
Right.
And the rebuild.
So it's an asset gone.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to let them lose
And now
real
the-
estate.
and now the building is gone too, I heard the lawyer about
The
the building.
lawyer, second floor.
So we lost 18 of mine years ago.
Yes.
I guess whenever they started building,
A lot of
we
people-
lost that years
The
ago.
biggest asset.
Henry Services.
Yeah, there you go.
The
You
biggest-
need service.
Henry's your guy.
He's a good guy.
The biggest asset to like why people really fight over 18th and Vine, as known amongst all the nerds, is it'd be the most best place to put a data center because it has the net, I think it's the net 2 fiber line cuts right under the Lincoln building, and that's the main fiber. It's the main fiber gig line for the United States.
I heard Sprint was going to come into the community and boost up the connectivity, but hasn't told anybody yet.
That would be awesome.
Sprint,
We've been working on that.
Well, Sprint, I know just earlier, maybe last week, they announced that Kansas City is going to be one of their first 5G cities.
Okay.
And they are deploying their small cell densification program citywide so that increase your
Which comes
cell phone
back to why there needs to
connectivity.
be an epicenter, so we can hire people like Heine to come in and
What's
actually,
going to be,
which is why you need an epicenter, you need somewhere that you can literally, if you're not learning the entrepreneurial side, you can't go to DeVry and learn how to work a 4560 Cisco switch. You can't go to the Verizons, they just don't have it, it's a $200,000 piece of equipment.
Doesn't the city have a Cisco Academy?
No.
No, we
It's
have,
fairly-
Learning Center does Cisco training.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought you guys were doing,
Well,
Sea Village
we're-
is also doing work around that too.
I thought you were doing,
so Cisco
They have
Academy,
these,
the Boy Learning Center,
mhm.
Harrison May, is
Right.
Cisco certifications.
Right.
You missed that first piece.
But the academy,
It's the equipment. It's Tom Esselman doesn't have the budget to actually train me on that piece.
Right.
So 5G comes in, so I get a CCNA and I know how to do a 1025 switch, it's 8 ports. It's not an enterprise level piece. For what I need the knowledge to secure that $90,000 job for when they come in, like when Google came in, they're laying fiber and they ended up outsourcing it and going to like 10 different firms. Kansas, a lot of people in Kansas City miss the wealth of Google
I
Fiber.
have no idea what you're talking about.
It's all of it.
I'm not a
Okay,
tech
so
person.
when they laid all of the like Ethernet cables or the fiber cables, those jobs were $45 an hour to terminate fiber. And sadly, we didn't have enough of us that were certified in the area. So now you have this 5G rollout. I worked on the 4G rollout with Sprint. I was making $150 an hour. I didn't climb a tower. I worked in a clean room lab, twisting oscillator cables, which are like these little tiny cables on the inside of repeaters, just because I understood the Cisco world. Didn't have a college degree. This is my first year out of Blue Valley, but I went to the CAPS program. And so that's how I learned.
So what he's saying is that we need a pipeline now to prepare for the 5G work that's coming in 2019.
It's coming.
And you're saying right now, who's certified to do Cisco at the level that you're talking about? I'm asking who?
Oh, I am. I have the certifications.
No, but who?
Oh, who in the, I mean, you do have,
Training.
you have Connecting for Good, you have Citric.
At the level that you're talking about?
Citric could do it, but Citric doesn't have a program that's over here. So I wish Brian was here because that's where you need now the transportation to get back out to Citric.
Right.
But Citric's also $23,000.
Right.
And so it becomes
I'm actually talking to them about using my innovation labs as a space for their training.
So you actually honestly just need
have it.
someone to give you access to that switch. So you can partner up with 1102 Grand Data Center, Alexander Open Systems, and convince them of, hey, you keep talking about you want to see more women and minorities. We don't have anywhere that you can actually train or touch the equipment. You can virtually touch it, but no, you really need to see this, touch it. Take a laptop, hook the comm connector to it, or really telnet into this thing and really configure and control it. And you can learn from someone like me that's retired from it, that I can help you out to learn these commands. Now you can pass the certification and voila, you make more money than a software engineer. And you don't code, you don't got to stress your life out. You can sit and chill in a data center and learn how to control the firewall. And I mean, we do have a shortage in the entire United States, like $93 billion of cybersecurity specialists, user interface engineers. None of these jobs really require you to have a college degree. And this is stuff that Ina, if she had the money, we having lots of black little engineers rolling around here, and we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Well, even with the MTA certification that I offer, the Microsoft Technology Associate certification, you don't have to go to college to start your IT career.
Yeah.
I mean, you can even skip Penn Valley and just come straight, get your certification. So finally, I have a cohort this summer, and then hopefully I'll have some this fall for high schools, because they're on this big hit right now, and having 2 credentials, graduating with your diploma and graduating with a workforce credential. And so I've got some opportunities coming up for that. But yeah, that's where we're at right now, because the kids don't want to go to college, and
you need funding to scale that.
Most definitely.
And you're working.
I said most definitely. Most definitely. Most definitely. Most definitely. Yeah. Well, that's why I was talking to the CRA director with Arvis Bank.
Right.
So hopefully he'll make an investment, and then I have another meeting this week with somebody who I'm hoping will make that investment. So that we can start getting some of our black kids in the pipeline to take advantage of these 21st century jobs.
Yeah. And then we get the economic mobility that the central city was set up to.
In the area of tech, that's one area. There's so
One
many areas.
area, right?
There's so many areas. In the
Yeah, but you
community.
got an innovation lab, so we've been working together. She's got her innovation lab on her side. I've got my innovation lab at Central High School, so now we're having the ecosystem. So whatever I'm not doing, she's doing, then we're bouncing off each other.
Good.
That's how you create the ecosystem.
Sir, would you introduce yourself?
Albert Anderson with the CrossFit Business Association,
Thank you.
and a friend of everybody in here.
All right, all right. We're on Facebook Live again too. Say hello to, I don't know
Hey.
who's watching now. Dan Smith and Diana Clemens were our last viewers. I think John Pager, Casey Vizcare still there. He had to man the office this afternoon, so he would get down here. Catherine, you've been kind of quiet. What do you think?
I'm always quiet.
Uh,
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, obviously we're on the other side of the state line, because that's where our money comes from, but we do service the whole area. We have people that we help, entrepreneurs we help in Columbia to Wichita. So we're not tied to spending that money in Johnson County, which is something I think a lot of people don't know. So under the Enterprise Center's umbrella, there's several different programs. I run the programs sort of on one side of it, which is really about, I run a mentoring program for entrepreneurs. We run a boot camp for entrepreneurs who are seeking equity funding, and some other things we're working on around that. But we kind of hit people in that growth stage, not so much in the beginning stage of their growth. But the Women's Business Center, you guys are talking about, Women's Business Center is also housed at the Enterprise Center, which I don't have anything to do with, but they have microloan funding and they have help with, business plans and all those sort of earlier stage support. And they mostly help women, but they don't exclusively help women. So they, they support male entrepreneurs as well, which is the majority, it's called the Women's Business Center for a reason. But people come from all over the metro area, and obviously, we have to be located on the Kansas side because Johnson County pays most of our operating expenses, though not all of it. So it doesn't, it doesn't feed your need to have something physically located on this side of the city, but it's certainly those resources are available to anyone that wants to come over. We do loans, microloans for people all over the metro area. Also, we actually just in January, they hired a loan officer, and it's always been an external person for that, but now those loans are actually sourced in-house. And, certainly there's a push for diversity. I mean, it's starting at the core of women, but then, all sorts of diversity there. So it's a resource that, again, goes back to what Rick was saying. It's programs based more than, the physicality of where it's located. We're working hard on my side of the house to extend further across Kansas. So that's, it's a different, it's a different need than you have, but in a way, it's a similar need also in that there's a lot of entrepreneurs in rural Kansas that have zero resources available to them. And so we're, making efforts to try to figure out how do you touch those people that are in these small communities all over that just don't have access to resources. And some of that's, mentoring, money, like whatever that happens to be. And so we have a mentoring program from MIT that I run. And, we've talked to MIT about allowing us to expand that geographically to communities that don't have access to it outside of the Kansas City area. And it took some talking, but they have agreed to allow that. And so we're working out a way to make that work. Again, it's in its current form, it's available to people in the metro area. And we have somebody that drives from Columbia every month for it. Somebody drives from Moberly. But again, it's trying to figure out all these different communities that have limited access and how can you tackle them. And I think even though our name includes Johnson County, our resources are not limited to that. I think that's something that often is lost.
So the mentor group you're talking about from MIT?
The GMS, yeah. So we call it growth mentoring.
So still at 100,000.
We offset it with other stuff. So that's a guideline, not a hard fast rule. Yeah. So we're tackling people that have had some success and they're trying to grow it to the next one.
I can apply. Yes. I can apply now.
Yeah.
Judy was here earlier too. Judy Bumpus.
Yes.
She was here earlier.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
She was here.
Yeah, so she sits diagonal. But yeah, so she's in the Women's Business Center.
So Rick, we just need $1.5 to $4 million. We're gonna go off and go build this lovely ecosystem.
Yeah, well, sometimes the money isn't as hard as the program or the community collaboration. So leadership, right.
Missing community collaboration, but that's missing in like pretty much damn near all of the startup communities across the United States. Programming, got the whole programming list right there, plus some. Some of this, yeah, you have that one. I mean, there's active groups that do some of that.
I brought a few copies of this. This is the resource rail that Casey Sorensen came up with a couple years ago. It's not geographic. They use the kind of a streetcar map as a kind of fun way to portray it. And the line is really the stage of growth your company is at. And then it lists a lot of their resource partners that can help you at those different stages. The last office hours I had here, Jamela was with me, and then Leslie Walton, right? Leslie Walton from Casey Sourcing was here, and we talked through which of these resources are available in the neighborhood. And really, all of them are available except those that might specifically be Kansas only. And you just explained ECJC is
All over.
Metro-wide. So it's getting back to that earlier part of our conversation of how do we make everyone in the community aware of these resources that are available.
Advertising.
And that's been our challenge, not just in the community here, but really city-wide, metro-wide. And our small business survey, KC BizCare, business owners that are aware of KC BizCare services, or KC SourceLink services, or EDC services, it's very low. 20, and we might have it up to 30% now on a initial survey. So raising awareness of these services to entrepreneurs is tough. Even as we make these headlines that we're striving to be most entrepreneurial city in America, so it just brings it out there. It's just more of this challenge
That
of how to
was just a
get more people.
catchphrase for the you and I, for the Big Five initiative.
Yeah, well, I think if anything, a lot of organizations are just co-opting that phrase because it's so cool. We're making America's most entrepreneurial city. The City Startup Foundation has the Mecca Challenge, where they're going into high schools and junior high schools. And that Mecca is the most entrepreneurial city in America. So.
I think there's also this sort of cultural challenge around everyone. There's both their head down working on their piece of the puzzle and not necessarily aware of everything else, but there's also sort of an ownership piece that I think plays into, if I share too much about what I'm doing and it bumps up again, you talk about the concentric circles, there's like this sense that if you take over some of what I'm doing, I might lose my space, in the world. And I think that has to be something that comes down a little bit. I think, again, going back to, we always try to say, like, what's the best for the entrepreneur? And, where's the holes in the, what the entrepreneur needs? And trying to fill that versus top up saying, what do I want to create? And I'm going to fit people into it, or I'm going to keep people out of it, or build my edges pretty firm. Just trying to be, more focused on the end game, which for us is just the entrepreneur's growth.
I think that comes from the fact that over the years, as we've been discussing this meeting, we don't have the financial means and we don't have the resources, but we have ideas, and we've seen our ideas being taken from us, from other communities. When the chamber did the Power Initiative a couple of years ago under Herman Johnson, that was the reason for that. That was the kumbaya for, we've taken so many business ideas from the Black community because you don't have the money, you don't have the resources, and so other people were doing that. And so it was the chamber's way of doing a kumbaya to say, oh, we'll do this thing, we'll help try to grow Black businesses. There has never been a Black homegrown business from Kansas City that I'm aware of. And I think that's a sad statement. And so there's a lot of people who's that? Well, that's true, I'm sorry, W. Du Bois, or Du Bois Consulting. And so you might have five. Okay, so I'll operate. We're probably the only one that's Black owned and operated. I'll roll back, okay. But for the most part, a lot of Overland Park businesses have built themselves by bootstrapping. But when you look at Kansas City, this is cyclical. So these conversations, so now we got this conversation, you got the one tomorrow night at FlexPod, you have the one that KC SourceLink had, it's just all talk. And I've told you about how I feel and the experiences that I've had. And so I think that unfortunately our counterparts think it's much easier to badmouth us and lie on us than to accept us as credible entrepreneurs. And that happens, that's basically what's going on right now. So now we're doing this big kumbaya with all these organizations who are trying to say, oh, can we help you Black businesses? How come you're not successful? How can we help you be successful entrepreneurs? Okay, well, let me go back and tell you what you did to me. So the level of microaggressions are real. And so we're going to have real talk. We're going to have real talk about the microaggressions and the way that we're talked to and the way that we're treated and the way that we're not respected as Black entrepreneurs.
Just entrepreneurs in general.
True, just entrepreneurs in general. Right.
You got to be Black entrepreneurs.
Right, that's true, but I'm just saying Black people as entrepreneurs. So once we get to real talk, then we'll have real solutions and we'll start moving towards this kumbaya that, our counterparts want. But right now, it's just talk. That's just my opinion, I'm sorry.
I don't know how many times I got to keep putting on the table. I want to expand the building. I got a building. I want to expand the building. I want to do more space. So when are we going to get ready to try to get this rolling? I don't know how many times I need to keep saying it.
but somebody's gonna come in and build something else that looks just like your thing.
They can do all they want, but unless you're serving the people, unless you have the connections to the community, it doesn't matter. That's why I'm not scared. I can care less. They can come here and build everything they want, but just be gentrified. They're not helping the people in the community. If that was the case, we wouldn't have to have this conversation.
So let's say hello to Bobby Baker, watching on the live stream here. Everyone know Bobby? Leads the Northeast Chamber. Hello, Bobby. This conversation is critical to this being successful. What you've been saying, Mia, about building it from the community, that was one of the strong themes of this conference that was at the Federal Reserve, because the phrase, if you build it, they will come, doesn't work. It has to be, if they build it, they will come.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the approach that we're trying to get at, trying to
So we
make
need
this
the
a productive
city to support
conversation.
that conversation too. So if we're saying that, we need the city to support it. So when people come and they want to build on our side, we need y'all to say
Who
and
in the
connect.
city? Ask who in the city?
Whoever it is, when they're.
No offense, Rick.
No.
Who in
No,
the
that's
city?
a great question, and that's why.
Outside of Rick having a conversation with us right now.
You mean who else in the city is saying that? Well, Rick is just.
No, who in the city can we go to?
I don't know. We don't know. And
Outside of
I think
Rick, who's
that's-
doing
Well,
this
so
part?
you
Who in the city can we go
have,
to?
you know, and so this is a hard conversation for me to have.
Don't have it, Rick.
But-
That's hard.
This
I want you to
time,
keep your job. So these
this
stuff
time
that's
of year, I
happening.
keep my head down, but I will say, you know, that you have your elected officials, you've got your department heads, you have your city manager, and you have an election coming up as well. So, but the main thing, I think, beyond who's in office, it's really what we're doing collectively as a community. And that's key, is just building relationships. You were at the startup policymaking event? Were you, who was there?
Of course.
Okay, so we
had everything close.
We had a.
Trying to build an incubator.
Okay,
There's too many people showing up.
But so what's happening and is with the growth of the startup and tech community in Kansas City, just more broadly, it is an emerging constituency that is seeking to have more influence on public policy.
Okay.
And we had this policy making event at FlexPod two months ago, I guess now, and about 50 people showed up, and we had city staff that kind of just walked through the process of taking a new idea or a change through whatever city processes might be there. But key to the success really of anything is building relationships with your elected officials outside of a crisis situation. And I think that the Central City, the method that it's been formed we've had a lot more conversation about what's happening there really, and then how we move it forward. So this, I'm hoping, is.
But Central
Yeah.
City shouldn't be the only
No.
funding
Yeah.
for the things that we're talking about. So there's that pool of money, but what about the pool of money that all the other resources are being attached to? That should be the only place
Yeah.
we're looking for.
EDC loan, the Quest has gone through them, Kaufman, EDC Loan Corporation, the city to a certain extent.
The reason why is because with the ACE sales tax, that could be the game changer. And that could be
I
the way to
agree.
get into capital that you can't otherwise access through all these other organizations. So I've sat and talked with AllCap and LISC and EDC Loan Corp. When we were discussing this in the very beginning about the sales tax, and my challenge to them was, if I can't get money from you, why would I continue to create the same spinning wheel of why people can't do what they need to do? So why shouldn't I be more innovative of how to leverage these dollars so that I can be more accessible to the money that you have, so that this doesn't go away?
We're not in disagreement.
No, I'm just
Saying that that shouldn't be, we have focused a lot on that as an opportunity, and I think we should leverage it as we can, but that shouldn't be the only source of funding, when there are other sources of funding that should be available.
And so answer me this question. How many funding sources do you think does a typical startup go through in the first 3 or 4 years of theirs?
An active one,
Yeah.
that's actively hitting the payment.
Like, how many ways have you identified to find funding in Kansas City?
Close to 100.
Yeah. Nobody, no developer of property, no startup gets their money from one source. Unless, I mean,
I think that's-
unless your dad gave you $1 million to start a company, but no.
But I think that's a big problem. I think we're still talking about two different things because our group is split.
Yes.
I mean, on one side, if I'm thinking right, we have the Main Street businesses / real estate development, which builds a different piece of wealth for our community, and it requires a different type of money. On the other side, we have our startups or people that are interested in that community that is actively talked about, where it's worn out on a daily basis of how do we fix this problem to create the wealth. And then I'll say a section of us cares about the workforce development and the training, which actually all kind of goes together to answer everyone's question. And I keep seeing us go back and forth on if it's funding, bouncing off in the building, when, like I said 20 minutes ago, there's 10 of us in here, we have 10 really, really smart, talented people that could walk out of here and put together a quick game plan and get together with Rick on a monthly basis, because he's going to keep doing these meetings on setting up a co-working space. And I mean, we can get together in this room every single time and bicker over what's happening, but why not just walk out of here with an actual, hey, let's try and do it. Let's really shoot for it, because without ruining my India, I can tell you about 4 people, city pieces and non-city pieces, who are not looking like any of us in the room, who are actively trying to solve this problem and have the money piece, but don't have the connection to a Nia or a Mimi or an I. They don't have the community. They have the funding and the money, but they're missing the big piece. And this is like, I don't know how many of us are going to the eShip Summit in July. I hope all of us are, but that's a piece, you know about it?
No, you already knew about it.
See, so that's a piece of the community. So like, I didn't know about it last year, and the only reason I found out about it is because I was written in a news article about the eShip Summit and all the great work that Rebecca Dove and I were doing, but we never met the news reporter, we never went to Kauffman Foundation. So the eShip Summit is where they bring in all the top entrepreneurs across the United States, all the main funders, all the VC groups in one room. Like, you literally have your Andreessens, your Village Capitals of the world, your Camelback Ventures, people that have $25 million, all the people that Kauffman's giving money to, all their funds are right here in Kansas City. And I think last year it was less than 20 brown people in the room.
When is it?
July. I'll send you the information.
Hey, Rick, let me try something, because, you know, I think these things that you all are talking about, and again, I've had the opportunity to talk to and work with almost all of you in this room. And the one piece that I hear us keep talking about is about this public assistance in some way. And yet and still, to me, the most secure and the fastest way to put your business on the street and make it work is to partner with somebody who's been in business before or is in business now. When you start talking about these public officials, 4 years later, you're going to be chasing them again and hoping that their agenda is the same thing that you're striving for. Let me give you an example of something that worked. Mia, your father, came to us about 7 months ago and said he needed some money for that credit union. We didn't go to the city of Kansas City and the rest of it. What did we do? We had our own private event. And in one weekend, we raised over $400,000. Now, let's fast forward to where we are today. That $400,000 through private sources now represents $1.1 million from other groups that we went and talked to. Am I right?
Right.
And so my point is that we put ourselves in the back seat all the time to talk about how we're going to get into these businesses. Right? One of the things we can do, and we might want to consider more of, is talking to people who might want to go into business with you. I've been talking for the past several days with the with the dean of a block business school. And he's saying to me, he says, hey, I've heard about this group called PBA. I hear what you all are trying to do. What if I were to hook you up with some of the businesses and organizations that are currently on these various boards and things with Block Business School? What if I were to introduce you all to some of these things? Now, I can only do one thing, and that is to try to introduce folk to some folk like what Rick is doing now. But at the same time, if somebody wants to do a coffee shop, you got to have a plan. You got to put a plan together. If somebody wants to open up a FedEx Express type of store, you got to have a plan. And there's groups and organizations out here that you can talk to, whether it's KC SourceLink or some of the rest of them who are hooked up. We're not hooked up, and for the most part, we are not with private businesses, but there are some opportunities to do that. And that's one of the reasons why PBA is a portal to bring people together. EDC has all kinds of folks that are attached to organizations, but we don't go to EDC and talk to them about meeting with some of their top people. We go in there and talk to them about these various funds that they have set aside for us to come in and talk to. But why aren't we down there talking to Block? Why aren't we down there talking to these various banks? We had 3 banks over to the Prospect Business Association. And you know what we asked them for? We asked them for $200 million to try to help us improve the urban core. The banker we talked to said, I won't give you $200 million, but what I will do, I'll bring some other people to the table and we'll help raise $200 million. Now that's the kind of conversations that we're trying to have to try to move this thing forward. Because as we continue to try to notch this thing along right now, we're failing, and we're failing miserably. When we open up that credit union, it's going to be a great day. On June the 16th, we open up this grocery store, and we'll be real happy about that. But when we open up that credit union, that's going to be a major game changer. We can talk about the 8% sales tax, but when we open up that credit union, it's a whole different ballgame. Why? Because it's black folk working with other black folk to help them get in business and hopefully sustain themselves in those businesses. So I say to you, we've got to start looking more at ourselves than trying to depend on all these agencies. You got bright people like Quest and all these other folks sitting around the table that are doing these things. But we got to look at ourselves and stop being so dependent upon others to get us to the table and try to open the doors for us. We've been trying to get black entrepreneurs into the shopping center. We got all these franchises over here. Now, when we go across the street, those small shops, for the most part, could and should be small businesses. That's what we're trying to get. But here we are, we're right over there. We're going to be open, and everybody's going to know that they can come over and talk to us about the possibility of doing it. We've already got bankers lined up who want to talk to folk about opening their businesses right across the street. We did it 25 years ago, and we can come back and we can do it again.
So every business doesn't start off with venture capital, like how you think.
Well, it's like a mic drop now. But
Better that plan and walk out of here with the action plan.
Diana Clemens added some comments about FLN.
Fawn. These are leaders of the network. That's
Her network has secured over $12.3 million from various funding sources, including expanding Arlington. Lots of grassroots organizations like INA's and business that have had challenge. We need help to excel to the next dimension. So there's commentary that Diana has put here, and then Cheryl Baker says, yes, Albert. So I scheduled here till 5, and I do need to leave at 5. But if everybody has my email address, I'm sold up. But yeah, let's. As Quest has said, I'm here every third Monday of the month, 3 to 5. Next month, though, we'll have to look at that.
July 4th.
But I get the word out through Prospect Business Association, through the Facebook page here. I'll compile this into notes, but anything you want to send to me to continue the conversation.
Hey, Rick, let me make this announcement real quick. You're gonna hear more about it. But
Yeah.
Robbie Malkin, who is the president of ATA or the director or whatever that title is, will be our speaker at our Prospect Business Association meeting. He's gonna give us an update on where we are with Prospect Max. He's also gonna talk about what the employment opportunities are, what the economic development opportunities are, because Ryan, who was sitting in here earlier, that's what he does. He's gonna also be talking about the vendor opportunities associated with it. We're talking about how can Prospect Max benefit us from a business standpoint. And that's what we're gonna be talking about come this, I think it's the 12th of June, 9 o'clock at the Palestine Civic Center. And it'll be an opportunity to find out more details about how to do business. That's why we're bringing these folks to the table. It's not just about them telling us about the things that they've been doing, but how can they do business with this community? We're not embarrassed to talk about the fact we need the opportunity to do these businesses. And so that's why we're talking to these bankers about $200 million. That's why we're talking to EDC about giving us a hand with these things. We're trying to set up something that's real. I mean, all this conversation for all these years, wow, some of you all ought to be tired. I know that I am.
Exactly.
We got, here's a man that ran he had seven phone stores. Yeah, 7 phone stores at one time here in town. Once upon a time, my brother and I, we had an automobile dealership and a radio station and this and that and so on and so forth. It can be done. And it was folks that look like those of you sitting around this table. For some reason, we got this feeling we can't do it. And we can do big projects. They don't have to all be nail shops. And I'm not nothing about nail shops and barbershops, but at the same time, we got to look beyond that and see some other things that can and will be done.
Mr. Anderson, you said June 12th at Palestine, at what time?
9 o'clock, 9 a.m.
And weren't you in the power program?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mentioned that earlier.
Herman Johnson, yeah,
Yeah,
I
Herman
was the
Johnson.
first graduate.
I was the first cohort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quick introductions, easy.
Yeah, hi, my name's Ezzy Redwood. So I thought it was gonna be a little bit less formal. But as I got out of doing some event planning for an event on Wednesday for a group I run, 4 other students, I wanted to make sure to come by.
Okay, great. Hi.
Hi, Claire Mengi.
Claire, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming. We're about to wrap up, but thanks.
Anyone watch this multi-business coalition happy hour?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Oh, I